My name is Sarah Miller. I'm 37 years old. I'm an Army major. And it took me 10 years to save enough to buy a beachfront house for my parents. While I was deployed overseas, my husband's family moved into that house, turned it into an illegal vacation rental, and locked my parents in a storage shed. When I arrived home to hand them the keys, I found my mom crying on the porch, with my mother-in-law screaming at her to leave. I didn't make a scene. I opened a folder and let the law do what shouting never could. My parents, Robert and Carol, have been married for 50 years. They've been poor for most of that time. My dad fixed tractors, and my mom polished other families' furniture. Our house always smelled of lemon oil. When I was 9, we once went to the coast. My mom leaned against the railing, closed her eyes, and said, "Wouldn't it be wonderful to fall asleep to that sound?" I never forgot it. I joined the Army because it was the only door that opened. I started as a logistics officer, then captain, then major. I saved nonstop for 10 years. Deployment pay. A small inheritance. Every bonus. Last spring, I closed on a big house with a porch overlooking the Pacific in Emerald Bay. It was $425. Ling ling ling. Deeded solely in my name. I signed the papers from a folding table 5,000 miles away. The plan was simple: bring my parents for their anniversary, put the key in my mom's hand, and watch her close her eyes to the sound of the water. My husband, Kevin, offered to manage the house while I finished my deployment. It was the most helpful thing he'd offered in years. And I thanked him. That should have been my first red flag. Utility bills started climbing right away. The way they do when more people are living there than should be. I asked Kevin. With half-hearted excuses, I asked for access to the accounts. He said he'd take care of it. He never did. I didn't panic. Panic is a tool I sharpened in places where it would have done real damage. My soldiers used to repeat the phrase, "I'm calm. That should worry you." It always worked because my calm meant I was already enacting a plan. But calm comes at a price. When Kevin's mom needed a place to stay, and he said just for a while, I said yes, from across the ocean. Without thinking enough, I landed on a gray Thursday. It was a 2.5-hour drive to the coast, with the ocean opening up silver on my left. I almost cried thinking about how much they were going to love it. Then I turned onto the gravel driveway, and my foot lifted from the accelerator all on its own. 3 strange cars in the driveway. A small sign stuck in my mom's flowerbed guests. The hook where they'd hung wind chimes was empty. Inside, strangers laughed with the laughter of people who had paid to be there. I walked up the steps. My mom, Tisha R., was on the porch, crying with her hand pressed over her mouth. My dad was on the steps with 2 suitcases, his hands shaking more than Parkinson's made them shake. Which meant it wasn't Parkinson's. The door opened, and Brenda stepped out with a glass of wine at 11 inches the morning. She saw my mom, crossed the porch in 3 strides, and said it loud and clear. "This is our house. Get out." My mom flinched as if she'd been slapped. My dad tried to get up but couldn't. Every cell in my body wanted to throw Brenda over the railing. I slowly set my bag on the ground and let the silence do its work. The glass tilted in her hand. She said, "Sarah." Just my name. She still didn't know whose name was on the paper that mattered. I walked past her and into the house I'd bought and never seen. The rooms had brass numbers on the doors like a hotel. The large kitchen I'd imagined for my mom had a folding table with a guest book and a small sign, "Check-in after 3 p.m. The place smelled of chemical tourist cleaner mixed with bleach. It didn't smell cared for. It smelled like a cover-up. Dave emerged from the hallway, carrying towels like a bellhop. He saw me, saw the uniform, and stopped dead. "This is a hotel," he blurted. The look between Kevin and Dave told me if my husband was a bystander or a partner. I turned around and went to the porch. Dad, let's find a clean room with 2 beds. He tried to apologize. I didn't let him. I carried their suitcases to the car and drove my parents 15 minutes to a motel overlooking the ocean. My mom told me what had happened over motel coffee. They had arrived on June 3rd. Expecting their new life. Dave had met them very kindly and told them there was a small overlap in dates. Would they mind staying in the garden shed during peak season, my parents, who had never wanted to bother anyone in their lives, said of course not. Days passed, and no one moved them. Brenda told my mom not to use the big kitchen to avoid confusing guests. My dad had hung those brass wind chimes on the porch hook for their anniversary because the sound reminded my mom of water. On the 3rd day, Dave told him a guest had complained about the noise, so my dad, who had never asked anything of anyone in 74 years, climbed onto a kitchen chair with his trembling hands, took down the chimes, wrapped them in a dish towel, and put them away, so as not to bother anyone in the house his daughter had bought for them. My mom told me that part looking into her coffee, and my dad said, "I'm sorry, honey. I didn't want to cause you trouble." That was the moment it stopped being grief and became cold, clean, and useful. I stood up. No one is causing me trouble. Dad, I'm the one who causes trouble. It's my job. Paula Jenkins had her office above a bait shop in the next town over. I laid the deed on her desk. She gave me the bad news. You can't change the locks if someone has been on the property for more than a month. You have to go through the courts. The deed had my name on it. And yet it wasn't enough to open my own door. Then she leaned forward. They're operating an unlicensed rental and not paying occupancy tax. If they don't have any, you've got leverage. I went in prepared for a fight. I left with something better, a process. I went back to the house that afternoon to try the friendly approach. Brenda was in my mom's chair, sunbathing. Brenda, this is my house. My parents are moving in here. And your family needs to leave. She laughed, head thrown back, and delivered the line she'd been saving. Honey, you were never one of us. The cruelty almost worked. But she was so pleased with herself that she got careless and yelled at me as I walked away. And we're fully booked until the end of the month. She had just told me for free that the listing was active and full. I thanked her. And I meant it. That night, I found the listing in 4 minutes. Beach house, in Emerald Bay. Host Dave. $340 a night. The cover photo was the master bedroom. The room I had chosen for my parents. Decorated with white hotel bedding. And then, almost at the bottom, a photo of the garden shed with a caption that read, "Owner's private quarters. Do not disturb." That's where they had put my parents. They had taken the master bedroom with the ocean view and were selling it by the night. I took screenshots of everything. The money didn't add up. Dozens of nights at $340. And yet Kevin kept asking me for extra money for the house. I started watching him differently. Then, I'm going to pick up my mom's medication. I saw it on the hall table, a window envelope addressed to Kevin. Sealed in red. Final notice. The window framed the summary amount due. A figure with a comma. And below it, a balance whose comma was 1 position to the left. I memorized both figures as I memorized coordinates. I went back the next day to get my mom's coat. And the house was empty, on the kitchen counter, where a family would put a recipe card. There was a professionally printed, thickly laminated sheet of the kind you make when you plan to use it a lot. "Welcome to Emerald Bay House," it said at the top. The Wi-Fi password. Checkout time. And almost at the bottom, if the line that took my breath away, "Do not enter the garden shed. Owner's storage. Owner's storage." They had gone to the trouble of laminating a card to make strangers comfortable. And on that same card, they had filed my mother and father under storage. I stood there holding the card with both hands. I won't pretend I was calm that minute. I wasn't. But I've learned what to do with a feeling that big. You don't waste it, you aim it. I photographed the card and put it in my pocket, along with the coin I'd carried on 2 deployments. I knew what I had to do. Paula and I built the case like a campaign. I brought her everything: the deed, the listing screenshots, the booking calendar, the laminated card. She said, "Most people do something impulsive and give the other party a win. We're going to be patient and exact. And that wins. 3 fronts at once. Aiming for the same Saturday. A lawsuit in court. A complaint to inspection for unlicensed rental. And a complaint to the platform for advertising a property without being the owner." Kevin came to the motel that night. He told me the truth. His business had gone under 18 months earlier. The debt was almost $60. Ling ling ling. Which he had never told me. He didn't ask about my parents. He didn't apologize. What he said was, "You can't let this happen. It's community property anyway. Half of it is basically mine." I looked at him. "I'm sorry about the debt," I said. "And this afternoon, I filed the papers." The platform acted on Friday. They cross-referenced the deed against the listing. You can't rent a house that isn't yours when the owner objects in writing with the title in hand. They took down the listing, canceled Dave's future reservations, and froze the pending payment in his account. Cancellation emails came in a flurry. Dave spent an hour on the phone before understanding that money would never arrive. The faucet dried up in one afternoon. Without me raising my voice or breaking a law, the inspection department posted its notice on the door. A guest named Carolina received the automatic notice about the dispute. She investigated. I found the record with my name. And wrote to me, "I think we're caught in the middle of something. We don't want any part in taking your house." I called her. She was charming and furious on my behalf. She said, "If it helps for someone to testify that we rented this from Dave, not you, we will." Dave's greed had put someone in my corner. But the moment I take from that Friday isn't legal. It's my dad. That night, I sat with him in the motel while my mom showered. He reached into his bag with his trembling hands and pulled out the brass wind chimes. Still wrapped in the dish towel. He handed them to me. "I kept them safe," he said. "Just in case." And quieter. "We're going to get it back. Honey." The house. I took the coin from my pocket and pressed it into his palm. "Keep it until Saturday. It's good in tough times." My mom came out of the bathroom and said, "You were always the firmest, honey." And my dad said, "I just hate that you had to be." I had no answer for that. Some things you just hold. Saturday dawned bright and windy. I arrived at the house a little before noon with my parents. The yard was already full of family. Brenda had set herself up as hostess of my parents' party. A glass of wine in her hand. The cease and desist notice taped to her back. Dave lurked at the edge. His face gray. Carolina was on the steps. My parents stood by the truck, unsure if they were guests or intruders at their own anniversary. I walked up the gravel driveway in my uniform. Unhurried. The conversation thinned. Heads turned. A silence expanding from where my boots stepped. Brenda saw me last. I didn't say anything yet. I went to my mom, kissed her cheek, and stood by her side. I poured myself a glass of water and waited. And the silence did what silence does. It made everyone listen. Brenda couldn't stand the stillness. She crossed the yard with her wine and threw the public challenge loud for 50. Well, has the major come to ruin her own parents' party? Is she going to make a scene in front of everyone? All faces turned to me. I set the glass on the table, pulled the documents from the folder, and laid them out one by one. And flat on the table, the deed with my name and only my name, the lawsuit sealed by the court, the municipal cease and desist, the platform's notification that the listing had been removed due to a property dispute. I didn't slam them on the table. I placed them like cards. And then I looked at Brenda and said it in a low, even, almost kind voice. I'm not going to make a scene. Brenda. I don't need to. A pause. I'm calm. That should worry you. You could hear the wind coming off the water, rattling the empty hook where the chimes used to hang. Brenda's eyes dropped to the papers. And for the first time since I'd walked up that gravel path, she truly read the name on the deed. Her smile didn't drop suddenly, it slid away. Brenda did what cornered people do. She stood taller to cover her fall. This is my family's house, she shouted. And the wine spilled. We made it work. We put in the effort. I let her rant for a few seconds because a yard full of people watching a calm woman next to a screaming one writes its own verdict. Then I placed a finger on the deed, turned it so the closest relatives could read it, and spoke loud enough to be heard. There's one name on the title of this house. It's not yours. It's mine. I bought it for my mom and dad with 10 years of my salary. You're right that someone is leaving today. Brenda. Read the name on the deed and be out of here by 5 p.m. Her mouth opened, and Paula's voice came from the edge of the group, dry and calm, confirming lawsuit filed. Order coming. Rental operating without a license. Then Carolina stood up from the steps and told the whole yard. My husband and I paid $2,000 to a man named Dave to stay in this house this week. We didn't know it wasn't his to rent. Heads turned to Dave. The municipal notice on the door. The deed on the table. The lawyer. The witness. The brother caught with nothing. There was no version of the story Brenda could tell. Brenda had one more card. She played it because it was all she had left. She straightened up and said in front of everyone, "You were never one of us. It was meant to hurt." As it had hurt before. But the yard had just seen the whole truth come out of a manila folder. And the phrase landed in dead silence. I didn't raise my voice. You're right. I'm not one of you. A pause. And I let the next part be soft. Because soft was sharper here. I'm the one with the key to this door. Then I named clear. Accountable consequences. So no one could confuse it with spite. Be out by 5 p.m. Or the order I filed will be executed by the county. And that's an officer. Not me. The frozen reservation money covers the bills you generated and the occupancy tax you didn't pay, which is in Dave's name. And every day someone remains past the order. The fine grows. Also in Dave's name. If you had asked for help, I told Brenda. Softer. I would have helped you. I always have. You didn't ask me. You took it and put my mother in a storage shed. Brenda looked around for an ally and found none. They left before 5 p.m. Dave first. Which tells you everything. He did the math on the fine under his name and was gone in less than an hour. Maria followed without a word. Brenda took longer, moving slowly through the house, waiting for someone to stop her. No one did. She walked past me, chin high and eyes wet. She didn't apologize to me, or my mom, or my dad. I didn't need it. An apology would have been for her, not for them. Kevin stood in the middle of the yard the whole time, between his mother's car and my parents' truck, trying to belong to both, and choosing in the end by not moving. When his mother's car pulled away, he was still standing there, the man in the middle, with no one. I walked to the door and peeled off the laminated sheet. Welcome to Emerald Bay House. I tore it in half and dropped the two pieces onto the porch planks. The house became truly silent. Not the tense silence of the first day, but the good kind. The one a house makes when the right people are finally the only ones left in it. We unloaded the truck before dinner. My mom walked into the big kitchen. Her kitchen. The one they had ordered her not to use, so as not to confuse guests. And she stood in the center and slowly turned. Then she found a rag and a bottle under the sink and started polishing the railing. In less than an hour, the entire downstairs smelled of lemon oil. It was a scent of care. The smell of my entire childhood spread again over a house that had reeked of greed and strangers. My dad unwrapped the brass wind chimes and hung them back on their hook. And the wind came off the water and made them sing. And my mom heard it from inside, through the screen door, and closed her eyes exactly as she had by that railing when I was 9. Exactly as I had imagined it for a year. My dad offered me the coin back. I closed his fingers around it again. This time forever. Keep it. Dad. It's yours now. You held the line just like I always have. He just held it and looked at the water and said the chimes sounded good where they were. And he was right. Kevin and I talked the next morning on the bluff. He brought up the debt. Said he loved me. That we could find a way. And a part of me wanted the easy path. Because swallowing things was the muscle I had exercised most. But I had seen what it cost. I had seen it sleeping in a storage shed. I'm sorry about the debt. Kevin. The debt is yours. But you let your family put my mother in a storage shed and rent out her room by the night. I'm filing for divorce. The house is my parents'. And we're done. He had no answer. There wasn't one. Some boundaries aren't a punishment. They're simply the shape of the line you should have drawn years ago. I sometimes think about that laminated card. How they went to the trouble of making strangers comfortable while filing my parents under storage. And I've come to believe this: loving someone has never meant handing them the keys to everything you built. Sometimes, the kindest and firmest thing you can do is put your name on the deed and keep it there. That's my story. A house bought with 10 years of savings, a laminated card for strangers, and a storage shed for my parents, and a deed with only one name, mine.